Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this.
Well, Michael McLean, thank you for coming on the podcast. I was so excited when your bio came across my email. I was like, oh my God, I got to get him on the podcast because I found your journey very, very interesting. And I think others would too. So we're going to start off and take a few moments. Tell me, who the hell is Michael McLean?
Well, when I graduated college, I thought I was going to coach hockey for a living, Sue. I never thought I was going to be in the insurance business. I never even thought I'd be an entrepreneur like my father and my grandfather. I wanted to coach hockey for a living because sports is my passion. And my actual plan B, if I wasn't good enough to coach in the National Hockey League, is my college degree is to be a gym teacher, a phys ed teacher. So I thought I had all my bases covered. And when I graduated at age 24, I had my very first minor pro hockey coaching job available. I was the youngest coach in minor pro at the age of 25. So I was like, well, I'm only a couple of years away from coaching at the highest level. I'm going to be coaching the best players. And then the strangest thing happened. I got fired in my third year of coaching pro hockey. And whoever thought that coaches were hired to be fired? I thought that I was the next coming. And my owner decided that I wasn't. And I was fired in my third year. So I went home to lick my wounds. And I was sitting at the kitchen table with my dad and my mom one night. And I was getting Sue ready to apply for my next coaching job. Being fired is part of sports. So I was getting ready to jump right back in. And my dad looked at me, and my dad had been running his family insurance agency for around 40 years at that time. He was just turning 70. And he said, son, he said, can I ask you a couple questions? And I said, for sure. And he said, do you ever see yourself being married? And I said, of course, I want to get married in the next 10 years. He said, do you ever see yourself as being a father? And I said, absolutely. And then he said to me, he said, how many cities have you lived in the last 4 years coaching hockey? And I said, 4. He said, how many owners have you worked for coaching hockey in the last 4 years? I said, 4. He goes, okay. So he goes, can you enlighten me? How is this going to work with a marriage and with children? He said, because your wife is going to pack up the house 15 times. Your children are going to attend 15 different schools. And if you're really as good as you think, you're probably going to get fired 5 to 6 more times. So you tell me how this all fits into lifestyle, because my dad was always a lifestyle business guy. And then my dad said something, Sue, that changed the direction of my life forever. He said, any dummy can make money. And my dad has been an entrepreneur since he was 15. He said, any dummy can get rich. He said, if you trade your life, you trade your marriage, you trade your relationship with your children, you trade your physical and mental health, you will become rich. And it will cost you everything. He says, I see that as your future in hockey. You can do it and you will do it, he says, but the cost will cost you everything. He said, I'm in the insurance business where I work 40 hours a week. I get to spend all my time with you, the kid, my sister, my brother. He's been married for 70 years. He said, what about this? He said, what about you join me in the family business for 1 year? He goes, give me the next 12 months of your life. I'd never worked in the industry. I didn't have a license. I had never worked in the insurance agency. He goes, give me 1 year. He says, I will teach you the insurance business from the front door to the back door over the next year. And after 1 year, you walk in my office. And if you say, Dad, this isn't for me, you can always go back to coaching, fill your boots. But if you love it like I do, he said, I will sell this agency to you over the next 10 years. And this family business will continue and you can run it your way. So I literally did every job in that business. I was everything from a paper pusher to a scanner to a receptionist. I cleaned the bathrooms. And at the end of the year, after doing almost every job, I would fire myself from every job, learn the next job, fire myself, learn the next job, fire myself, learn the next job. At the end of the year, I was in the sales area, and I said, you know what? I can do this. And then I walked into my dad's office and I said, Dad, I don't like this business. I love this business. And I am obsessed with taking this business to the next level, if you agree.
Wow.
And he said, okay. He said, let's cut a deal. He said, you're going to pay me $30,000 a month for the next 10 years. He said, you're going to live in a bachelor apartment. You're going to drive a used car, and you're going to live as humble as you possibly can. And he says, after 10 years, you will own this place and you can live the life of your dreams. And I was used to coaching pro hockey, where I drove a sports car and lived in beautiful condominiums. He says, you live humble for the next 10 years, and this place financially will be yours.
Wow.
He said also, because you love hockey and sports, he says, why don't you coach an amateur team for fun on the side? He said, you can scratch that itch. You can help the teenagers like you like doing. And he said, that will be your give back to the community. So you'll have the agency and you'll have a team on the side where you donate your time and abilities. And I did that for 17 years.
Wow.
That's how I stumbled into the insurance business. I worked shoulder to shoulder with my dad for 17 glorious years. And in 2017, I sold the business for a record multiple, industry and history multiple. We 5X'd the business. We went from 4 people to 23. We were an absolute powerhouse in personal lines, which is home and car. And we were the #1 producing agent for 7 consecutive years in the entire country, from a town of 6,000 people. That's the power of marketing, selling, and running the team and running the business almost like a hockey team.
That's an amazing story, because you started with small steps, and the one thing that I love to point out with, especially with guests that do extraordinary, amazing things, is the time frame. You mentioned that you worked with your father for 17 glorious years. And I know that at times we feel like we should have something faster, sooner, better. And I appreciate that about your story, that it does take time. It does take small steps. That first small step was you listened to some advice and you took a chance and you decided to see, hey, let's see how this goes.
And I
So,
set a goal, Sue, for 15 years. I said to my dad when I bought the business, I said, I'm gonna do this for 15 years and then reevaluate.
mhm,
Because I wanted to retire at the age of 45, and I missed it by 2 years. I retired at 47 my first time. And I
mhm,
only retire for a couple of months until I take on my next mission. But my dad humbled me by saying, you know what? You're not only going to pay me $30,000 for 10 years. He said, that's what you're going to pay yourself. So
mhm,
everybody in this agency is going to be higher paid than you. The receptionist is going to make more money than you. The service people are going to make money more. The cleaning people will make more money than you. And he goes, I don't care. He says, this is all about long term. And
mhm.
I had that mentality, because when you build a championship football team or a baseball team or a hockey team, it's all about violent consistency. Like, I call it violent consistency. See, the thing about myself is I have no special abilities. I don't have any special talent. And my dad told me as much when I was growing up. He said, listen, he said, your sister, my older sister, she's gifted academically, and she's going to go into medicine and she's going to change the world that way. She's gifted academically. Your younger brother, Michael, is gifted athletically. He has the ability to throw us a football, 100 yards and a spiral. He says, you don't have any of those special gifts. But he says, the gift that you have, nobody will ever see you coming. You will
Mhm.
always be underrated no matter what you do, whether you coach hockey, whether you raise money for the food bank, whatever you do, they will never, ever see you coming. And that was the point where I said, you know what? I need to show up every day and be violently consistent. And if I'm willing to focus on the small steps and never on the outcome, never, ever, ever do I hit grand slams. I can't remember in all my years in the insurance business ever hitting a triple. I don't even know if we ever hit a double. So, how do you become number one in the entire nation? By hitting singles every day. And the
Yeah.
way we did it was being violently consistent.
Consistent. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it all came down to small steps. And the only time, Sue, I ever got myself in trouble in any business is when I started to focus on the outcome instead of what I have to do today. And when I was paying my dad $30,000 a month, I'd never even made $30,000 a year. That kept me dialed in that I've got to make $1,000 as a business owner a day. And I would literally break it down to the hour. And you want to talk about small steps.
Yeah.
I focused only on that one thing, being violently consistent every day. And 17 years later, I got the result that I was looking for.
And then reverse engineered it. Brilliant. How did you navigate limiting beliefs then? Because I heard you say like your dad said to you your older sister was going on to medicine and then your younger brother was gifted athletically, but your special talent is that nobody will see you coming. And listening to that, it doesn't sound amazing, but yet you built an amazing life. I suspect there had to be some kind of limiting belief or some type of challenge that you had to overcome.
Before I went in, when I bought the business, he said, Michael, he said, don't come in here and think you're in the insurance business. He says, all of your abilities are in marketing, in team building. You know how to make people, you know how to get the best out of people. He said, so do me a favor. When you come in here and start to operate this place, run it like one of your teams. Don't run this like a stale, dull insurance agency. He said, you're a recruiter, you bring out the best in people, you're a motivator. He said, you're a marketer. So do that for the next 2 decades. So that was great advice because, Sue, I was getting ready to learn the insurance business. And if I had learned the insurance business, I would have learned all the limiting beliefs. I would have learned all the bad habits. And instead, my dad said, listen, there's nobody like you in the insurance business, marketing, a coach style. He said, come in and do that. And that's exactly what I did. When I renovated the office, it's amazing. It looked more like a locker room than it did like an office. So I renovated the whole building. And I built it like the Dallas Cowboys would build their locker room, or the New York Yankees. Like I put in a weight room, a fitness room. Everybody had a window, everybody had a door, everybody had a locker, everybody had gold nameplates, everybody had fresh air, everybody, it didn't matter who you were treated like a high performance person. And everybody had parking spots, everybody had business cards, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
And we invested heavily in personal development. Everybody had a book to read, book reports. We brought in speakers. We took people to seminars. So we really invested in our people. And the thing when I bought the agency from my dad, we had 4 people. I took a broom to the place because after working a year with these people, I realized that these weren't people that were going to help me get to the next level. They were anti-sales, anti-business. My dad wasn't a very strong manager, and he said, you need to bring your own team in here. So from that day forward, building the team from 0 to 23, I never once in 17 years, Sue, hired a person with 1 day of insurance experience. Not 1 day. If I got a resume that said, oh, I worked in an insurance agency, I just got rid of it. And instead, I kept my sports mentality where I was always recruiting hockey players, always recruiting athletes. And when I would walk into the coffee shop or I'd walk into the restaurant or somebody would be cutting grass, I don't care what it was. Every business has one superstar. A grocery store has one superstore. has one superstar. I believe that to the end of the earth. I would always watch these people and look for them. And then after I was convinced that that's the superstar of this business, and most of these people are making minimum wage, I would give them my business card and I would say, if you're ever looking for a change in career, please give me a call. I think I have something for you. And I did that 23 different times at every level.
Wow.
All my receptionists were recruited. My service people were recruited. My sales people were recruited. My executive assistant were recruited. And they didn't even know they were on a job interview. If I walk into a Dunkin' Donuts or I walk into a
Wow.
restaurant and I see an amazing person, I automatically give them my business card, my old school business card. And I'm like, if you ever want to change, please call me. And that's the power of people. So I wanted to take all these small steps over the next 17 years. I needed the people to help me take these steps. And it was funny because in businesses, the receptionist, as an example, is usually the person that was just hired. They make the least amount of money. Go answer the phones. Go answer
Yeah.
the
What kind of qualities, I'm just curious, what kind of qualities did you look for in other people?
Coachability is number one. I have no tolerance for people, and I learned this in sport. If you have a closed mind, and you know this from your experience, you can't help a person. So I'm looking for coachability, and I'm looking for people that are under extreme stress, but they still have a champion's attitude. The lineup at the coffee house is around the corner. People are being rude. They're not using their manners, but this person still shows up. So I can size up a person in probably 7 seconds, but if I'm watching them, I can size them up in 30 seconds by body language, their breathing, and I'm in there day after day. And I'm just watching, how do they treat other people? How do
Mm.
they respond to pressure? And the areas that we really excelled in was, number one, is anybody with a background in farming. We live in a rural area. And these are children that grew up on a farm. They have a university education, but they were used to Sue doing chores before school. They were
Mhm.
used to working all summer. So what kind of an attitude and work ethic do you think you inherit? One of my managers grew up on a farm and he ended up as an IT guy for me. He said, Michael, 9 to 5, he says, I get up at 4 a.m. every day and wait to come to work. The other area was hospitality. That was another home run for me. Any waitress or waiter or bartender, they knew about commission, they knew about
Mhm.
tips, they knew about dealing with people that drank too much, they knew about late hours. Once again, 9 to 5 was a piece of cake. And the
Right.
third area, Sue, that I got was anybody that grew up in a small business. When somebody said to me, my dad or mom ran a whatever, I was like, now we're in business. So
Right.
those were the three areas plus coachability that I look for.
You have a lot of different areas of your life. You're an entrepreneur, you're an author, you're a speaker, philanthropist. There's so much that you do. I'm curious about, how do you prioritize your time and your commitments that you have? Because what are some tips and tricks that you've done to help you over the years?
The best piece of advice I've ever got is vitamin N, which is no. No is my favorite word. No is my favorite complete sentence in the English language. And my life transformed when I started applying vitamin N every day to my life 20 years ago. And I learned the concept from Warren Buffett. When Warren Buffett, it's not that it just his financial abilities. He's got a great life. He sits in his office and he reads for 5 hours a day. You don't read in your office for 5 hours a day unless you have the discipline of vitamin N. And Buffett always said, he said, the secret to his success and mental health is he says no to everything. He says
Mm.
no to everything. And they showed his daytimer one time, one of the old school daytimers, and they went through it for 4 weeks. And the only thing listed in the fifth richest man in the world at the time was a dentist appointment. One dentist appointment in 30 days. And they said, how is this possible? And he says, I say no to everything. I study the markets and I say no to everything. And I drive home at 5 p.m. I drive
Mm.
home at 5 p.m. and that's it. Also, he doesn't do anything to do with social media. He doesn't carry his cell phone. So he's always one of these guys, high performance.
Right.
So when I used to run around like a chicken with my head cut off, and I was running a Frankenstein business the first couple of years, I then said to myself, okay, I'm going to start saying no to anything that doesn't have something to do with my mission. So my mission, Sue, was to become number one in the whole country. That was my mission. So every time somebody would ask me to do something, they might say, Michael, would you like to invest in this building? Would you like to go golfing? Would you like to, whatever it was, big and small, I would stop myself and say, is this something that's going to help me achieve my mission over the next 20 years? And as soon as the answer was no, it was a hell no. I'd love to go golfing, but if I say yes to golfing, that means I can't drive my daughter to school. And Buffett always said,
Yes.
every yes is a no to something
No to
that
something.
matters. So if
Right.
I say yes to coaching, buying another team, or I say yes to meeting the guys for a drink, that means I can't go on my date night with my wife, or that means I can't do something that matters to me. So I
Mm.
go around all day, every day saying no to almost everything. So this podcast is a perfect example. It's one of the rare yeses in my life because will this help me on my mission? And my mission is to help 1 million entrepreneurs over the next decade. So by
Cool.
me coming on here and sharing with you, this is something that will help my mission. So it's a yes. Everything else today was a no. Michael, do you want to meet for lunch? No. Do you want to do? No. And that just keeps bringing me back to the most important people in my life. My priority is my queen, my wife, Krista, and my daughter, Emery. And I'm not willing to sacrifice any of my time with them because of a yes. And it's interesting, people like, Michael, how many hours a day do you work? I work between 3 and 5 hours a day because I say no to all the stuff that doesn't matter.
Things. Yeah. Yeah. What I love about the word no is that it allows you to open up other possibilities. As you were talking about, when you say no to things, you say yes to something else. How do you help somebody who thinks they are lacking because they say no to something?
I never struggled with the word no. Most people do. I'm not a people pleaser. Most people are people pleasers. And when growing up in pro hockey and amateur hockey, if I don't get the result, I was in a results based business. So if I don't win enough games, I'm going to be packing up my house. So you don't have that people pleasing kind of mentality.
Mhm.
So most of my students that struggle, they say yes to everything and they're people pleasers. And then at the end of the day, they have nothing left to give.
Mm.
They don't invest in their own mental health, their own physical health. They just give till there's nothing left to give. The biggest thing is my dad told me one time, and my mom and dad are both 91 and they're doing extremely well. But one word my dad told me this summer, we were out on the boat in the middle of the lake, and he said, son, he goes, I know you make a lot of decisions in a day, and some of them are difficult to say no to, let's say a charity. He says, think of it this way. If you live to 85, and my dad's 91, so I'm listening to what he said. He said, ask yourself, will this matter at all when you're 85 or 90? And then that's just, Sue, another level of clarity
Mhm.
because the nonsense we involve ourselves in. Like I got
Mm.
invited to a 30th anniversary the other day, and I just no with no excuse. And my wife is like, "How do you do that? How do you just say no to almost everything?" And then I'm thinking as an 85-year-old self, and I'm like, that party does not matter to me at all. They're not close
Mm.
friends. They're not. So that is what the discipline, because it never leaves you. Naturally, we want to be people pleasers, but I keep coming back to my wife and my daughter. I would prefer not to say no to them. And I've never been in a situation where I've had to cancel taking my daughter to school. I've never been in a situation where I've had to disappoint my wife. And that's because I'm just like, listen, if it's a yes, it's a no to them. So I guess it comes back to that principle and priority. My family is my priority. People ask me all the time, Sue, they say, what does success mean to you now? And I said, it's always meant the same: applause at home. I want to be a
Wow.
hero in my own home. That's success to me. I don't need any more money. I don't need any more awards. I don't need any more ovations. I need applause at home. My number
Mhm.
one principle, priority, and value is to be a hero in my own home. I have no chance to be a hero in my own home if I'm a people pleaser. So it gets right down to your priorities, and will this matter at all in the end?
Mhm. Mhm. So the priorities are the things that drive you to answer the yes or no. I heard you mention the word discipline, and people don't like that word. Talk about the role of discipline in your life. You have talked about some of it, but what are your thoughts on maintaining discipline and using that as a driver behind what you do?
Well, you're a perfect example. You're a disciplined person, and before the more disciplined you are each day, the more freedom you have. So one of my top values is freedom. I didn't make money to make money. I made money because I want to be free. I call it personal sovereignty. I want to have personal sovereignty, freedom, whatever you want to call it.
Mm,
You
I
can't
like
have any
personal.
freedom without discipline. So when you see all these people around that have no structure and no discipline, they also are living lives of quiet desperation, right? They get up and they lose control of their day in the first 10 minutes. I call it playing defense. 99% of people are living lives of quiet desperation. And the reason they're living, Sue, lives of quiet desperation, they're victims, is because they get up and they play defense. They get up, they open their eyes, and they play not to lose. What I've done for the last 22 years, one small step at a time, is I get up and I play offense. I get up and I play to win. Well, what does that mean? Well, the difference in the first hour of my day and everybody else's day is insane. Like, first of all, I don't check my cell phone until 12 noon. So I work on my agenda till noon. Most people get up and check their phone, and within 10 minutes, they've lost control of their day, because in your phone is what? Somebody else's agenda. But
Right.
all the students that I work with, they're all living lives of quiet desperation because they're playing defense all the time. They've got addiction to their phone, they've got addiction to anti social media. And I tell them all the time, you don't need more time, you need more focus. And I think that when you teach, we talked a little bit about your kids and my daughter. When our kids have discipline, they have
Yes.
an extra player on the field. Our jobs as mums and dads is not to raise children. Our job as mums and dads is to raise lions and lionesses. Like, I'm raising a warrior who can be an entrepreneur. And my job as a father is to make sure that she has a loaded deck or an extra man or an extra player on the field. And that's all through structure and discipline. But when you're anxious and you're depressed and all this other stuff, automatically there's a lack of structure. Like, I love to get up in the morning and play offense and go for a walk and say a prayer and read and write. And then the chaos of the day can happen. But I win the first hour of my day, I win the second hour, and I win the third hour. And then I let the rest of the day happen. And when you win that first hour of the day, that magic time in the morning, you win the day. And it's so funny. I call it stacking 23s. So
Mm.
W is the 23rd letter in the alphabet. I learned this in the youth prison system when I volunteered there when I was in college. And the kids would be in the weight room training. And these are kids that are in closed custody, lots of problems. And I was one of the counselors, one of the greatest experiences I ever had. And they would be in the weight room and would do working out, and they'd be like, stacking the 23s, Michael, stacking the 23s. That was their language inside the jail. And
Mm.
I'm like, 23s? And they're like, W's, wins. And they were teaching these young men, in this particular case, to win the morning. Stack the 23s the first hour,
Mhm.
stack the 20. And I've had that mentality ever since. And by the time I hit noon, I like to be 15-0 or 20-0. And they're the most ridiculous little tiny goals that just give
Yeah.
you momentum. When I pray first thing in the morning, I'm stacking a 23. When I drink 2 glasses of water, I'm stacking a 23. Compare that to playing defense. So win the first hour of your day and life becomes so much simpler.
How did you find your routine in the morning, like for you personally, to stack your wins to help you? And I'm thinking more small steps for other people. Or they're listening to you going like, yeah, I want to do that too. What would your advice be?
Well, I was running a Frankenstein business. I didn't have time to do one thing. We only had a couple of employees when I started working for my dad. I'm under this immense pressure. It's like I got a gorilla or a piano on my back every day. I can't even look up. And it was Dan Kennedy, the great Dan Kennedy. I was in his mastermind, and we're going to the bathroom on a break in Baltimore. And he says to me, he goes, Michael, he said, you just said in the room that you want to be a millionaire. You want to be a guy who's a millionaire someday. And I said, absolutely. He said, well, he says, you talk a good game, but he says, you play a lousy game. He said, okay, he said, that room is full of people that are multimillionaires, 9 figures, 8 figures. He said, you're the poorest guy in that room. And he said, you're the only man standing out here on your phone. He said, there's Russell Brunson's in there, there's Michael Cage's, there's guys making $20 million a year. He says, and you're the only guy out here on break on your phone. He says, you know what I call this? And I'm on my phone. He says, behavior of the poor. And I was like stunned. I was like, behavior of the poor. He goes, you can't do this if you want to be a millionaire. And at the time, I was barely making any money. And he said, you need to do one thing. You need to win the first hour of your day. And at the time, Sue, I would stay up late. I would watch sports and I'd get my ass to bed at midnight. And then I'd wake up at 6 o'clock or 7. I'm fatigued, I'm tired, I shower, I put on my suit and I go to work. That's playing defense. He said, you need to go to bed 1 hour earlier and get up 1 hour sooner. And I was like, well, I'm not a morning person. He goes, well, you won't be a rich person either. So I took the advice to heart and I started getting up at 6 o'clock in my apartment. And he says, the first hour of the day belongs to you, nobody else. And use it to do the number one thing that you need in your life. It could be marketing, it could be walking, it could be prayer, it could be reading. But everybody has a number one thing. And that hour gets that number one thing. So I had put on 23 pounds of extra weight working in an office for the first time. I'd never worked in an office. So I started, Sue, investing that first hour, 7 days a week in walking for an hour. And I lost the 23 pounds in the next 60 days. Then I started investing the 1 hour in marketing. And I would design flyers and postcards and video, anything to do with money. And then now today, the first hour of my day goes into reading, sharpening the axe. So it's different for every person, but my life transformed the first time I said, okay, the first hour of the day belongs to me. And it was the great Bill Glazier that said to me, he goes, Michael, he goes, the first hour of the day belongs to the 2 most important people in your life. And I said, who's that, Bill? He says, the man you are today and the man you're becoming tomorrow. And I never forgot that. He said, pay yourself first. The first hour of the day belongs to you.
Wow, I love that you said pay yourself first, and then you're going to take care of the future version of yourself. We live in a culture, I feel like today, that sends the message that you're not supposed to take care of yourself. You're supposed to take care of others first, and you're selfish if you take care of yourself first. And listening to you and all that you've done, it's like, no, it's the other way around. If you take care of yourself first, then it allows you to take care of everybody else. And the other thing that I loved about you talking about what your first hour is that it has evolved and changed over the years too.
You talk about
But
small steps. Every
yeah.
hour, that was 7 hours a week that I was investing in my fitness. Then
Mhm.
when I started marketing, that was 7 hours of marketing a week times 52 weeks. You want to talk about stacking the W's. I had no marketing going in my business. I used the excuse, well, I'm too busy. All of a sudden, I started doing Operation Money Suck every morning for an hour, like the late, great Gary Halbert used to call it, Operation Money Suck, something that brings you money. All of a sudden, I wrote a book that first year. All of a sudden, I designed a flyer that made us money, postcards. I started publishing a print newsletter. All these things that I never had time for, 1 hour a day. And one thing that I learned in sport is most of those mornings, Sue, I didn't want to get up at 6 a.m. I'd lie there in bed, and I have a rule. I count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, feet on the floor. It's non negotiable. My first hour for 22 years has been non negotiable. Whether I'm happy, whether I'm sad, whether I'm sick, whether I'm in Naples, whether I'm in Canada, feet on the floor, count of 5. The thing then is the mental has to be stronger than the emotions. So how I feel or what my emotions are at the time have no impact whatsoever. I'm getting up to chase that next version of myself. And going to bed an hour earlier was everything. I have a friend who coaches in the National Hockey League, and he trains his $1 million athletes, and he has a great saying: rest is a weapon. Rest is a weapon. And when I started sleeping properly, it was easier to put my feet on the floor, and then it was easier from there. But literally, I built my empire over 2 decades, putting my feet on the floor and investing in myself for 1 hour per day. And the other 23 hours were chaos, but it didn't matter because I had paid myself first.
And I bet there's a sense of satisfaction that goes with that as well. I am curious, what is your thoughts on failure? You talked a lot about winning and stacking the W's. And what's your advice to those who struggle with failure?
Well, there is no such thing as failure. That's a mindset. So there's winning and there's learning. I learned that in hockey. I learned that in business. The best story I've ever heard about that is from the Spanx girl, that $1 billion company. And when she would sit down at the kitchen table with her and her brother, their dad would ask them once a week, "What have you failed at this week? Give me something that was a colossal failure, something that you really wanted, didn't happen." And she would say she remembered telling her dad, "Well, I tried out for the play and I didn't get the role," or "I tried out for the volleyball team and I got cut." And he literally celebrated failure at the dinner table once a week. And she remembered, like, she was selling fax machines door to door. She was selling Xerox printers back in the day. And she said she would hand her business card to business owners, and she's back there selling door to door. And some business owners would take the business card and fling it back in her face. Others would tell her to get lost. Others would say thank you. She said the alligator skin that door to door created in her is that no meant not now. So then when she came up with the concept of Spanx, and she said basically cutting the feet off of old, leotards, all of her friends and family said, "You're crazy. Nobody's going to listen to you." And the next thing you know, 10 years later, she's a $1 billion company. But it goes back to those tiny steps. People don't see her knocking on doors for 10 years and getting no day after day. She goes, "If I sold one photocopier in a day or one fax machine, that was celebration." And then when it came to her idea, they laughed her out of town. And now she's got, $1 billion company. It was the same in our house. My dad is like, if you're not failing all the time, you're not living your mission. So for me, it's a mindset. And this, Sue, is why 8th place trophies drive me crazy. My daughter's taken a pickleball clinic last year in Naples. The guy was a tremendous coach. I loved it. And the last day, he hands out these medals. And I'm like, what the hell is this for? And he said, "Well, I want everyone to feel good." And I was like, "Feel good?" I said, "This was an amazing clinic for 8 weeks. What's with the medals?" And he hands it to my daughter, and she's used to winning and losing. And I said, "You're giving this to these children and they didn't earn it." And that's the thing where we're all afraid of failing. Like, my daughter's in equestrian, she's in hockey, she's in chess. Like, I put her in environments where she gets her ass kicked on purpose. Like, when she starts to think that she's a great chess player, I take her to New York City. When she starts to think that she's a great equestrian, I take her to Naples and she goes from the penthouse to the outhouse. But I call that mental calluses. But there
Right.
is no losing. And when
Yeah.
you're in entrepreneurship, I encourage myself all the time, Michael, fail fast, fail
Yeah.
fast.
What looking back at your career, what are some of the most valuable lessons that you've learned?
Well, getting fired was the worst thing that ever happened to me. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. So everything happens for a reason. You have to have a vision for your life. And, talking about winning and losing, I learned in the hockey business, and my dad always said, we don't learn anything from winning. And you don't. You don't learn an awful lot from winning. You learn from losing, and you learn to smarten up and get better. That's what my dad always said about hockey, business, life. When you lose, you get taken behind the woodshed. It's the best thing that ever happened for you because you smarten up and you get better. And we just talked about earlier about the three types of people from the industries I've had hiring success. Well, those are all industries where you get your ass kicked every day. If you're a waitress or a waiter or a bartender, that's front lines. If you're in the farming business or you're a rancher, that's front lines. You're
Yeah.
in the ass kicking business. Same thing if your parents ran a small business. Like my daughter at age 12 is used to watching me fail and fail and fail and fail. If I send out a successful email, it's like, most people didn't even read it. So my biggest thing is I've learned through maturity is the things that we think are the worst things that happen to us are actually the best. And it was Anthony Robbins when I went to one of his seminars years ago in Hawaii. He said, the questions we ask ourselves will be the quality of our life. So instead of saying, and language matters,
Oh,
this,
words matter.
language matters. And people talk to themselves like, my dad calls it loser language. And
Mhm.
we're on our daughter all the time. In fact, in our home, we've deputized each person. If my wife ever hears me whining, complaining, or talking poorly, boom, she's on it. Same with her and same with my daughter.
Yeah.
But Tony Robbins said, the question you ask yourself when you fail will transform your life. So when I got fired, when I was younger, I was like, woe is me. How did this happen? Why did this happen? And then all of a sudden, I started asking myself better questions. What can I learn from this? How can I share this story? And once again, it became one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. But I just find that my losses and my failures and my missteps and my embarrassments have been more valuable than any winning that I've ever experienced.
What advice would you give to your younger self, the words of wisdom, especially for aspiring entrepreneurs? What would you tell them?
Stop comparing yourself to other people. It was bad enough when I was in my teens and 20s and 30s, but anti-social media. So I'll give you an example. My business partner, I've never had a business partner before, but I have a business partner in my consulting business because he's the behind the scenes technology guy, Marc Andre. Well, Marc Andre was one of my team captains for 4 years. So he was also on a job interview he never even knew about. And then he came to me 4 years ago and he said, Coach, could I work for you for free? I want to learn business. I said, sure. So he almost, he lived simple for 2 years. And then finally, he's become a partner in this business. And I said to him, I said, listen, that social media stuff has to go. If you're going to work with me, I'm not going to compete with you on there. I called it, rat poison. Social media is rat poison, especially for young people. And the reason, Sue, it's rat poison is because it forces you to compare yourself,
Mhm.
and it's all horseshit. Okay, I had a no social media rule in my insurance agency, my barber shop, and my hockey players. They were not allowed to participate in social media. I believe we won a championship because of it. But if
Mm.
you are going to sit there and you're going to compare yourself to other people, their vacation's better, they have more money, their mom is better than my mom, they have a better town, it's all nonsense.
Yeah.
And if you spend that kind of time, it's low frequency energy, you're never, ever, ever going to find anything but unhappiness. So when my business partner at 25, now he's 27, shut that stuff off, He reclaimed his mental health. I said, you know who you have to focus on, Mark? I said, maybe you don't have any mirrors in your house, but you can go to Walmart and buy some mirrors. Every day you wake up, take a look into that mirror. That's the only person that can make you healthy, wealthy, happy, sad, depressed, whatever it is you want. The man in the glass or the woman in the glass. And get rid of all the rest of it. But the secret to unhappiness, Sue, is to compare yourself to other people.
Yep.
And running
Amen.
your own race is the secret in 2024.
We were talking about words, and words matter. Let's go a layer deeper. We actually have to believe 100% that we are capable of greatness, and believe in ourselves that we can do anything that we set out to do. What are your thoughts on fueling the belief, especially if you're the only one who believes in yourself?
Well, I went as far as banning words with my teams. If you played for the Perth Blue Wings, there were cuss words, okay? Cuss words. Let me give you some cuss words, okay? Can't. Nobody would ever, one of my athletes, if I ever heard that off their lips, they would be a healthy scratch. Fatigued and tired is never a word that was heard in 7 straight years inside our culture. Bruce Lee said it best. He said, our conscious and subconscious cannot tell the difference between sarcasm, and it cannot tell the difference between real and non-real. And the reason spelling is called spelling is words are spellbound. In other words, we can literally cast spells on ourselves by the words. So if you say to yourself in the fourth quarter, man, I'm tired. Well, that's the result we're going to get. Or with my daughter, can't. She doesn't say that anymore, but just these simple words. Money doesn't grow on trees. I was never good at math. I'm not a business person. And these are all limiting beliefs, as you know. But the secret with language is deputizing people in your life that you love and respect, like your wife, your husband, your kids, and just constantly curating and swift sorting those words out of your language. And we all fall into it, where all of a sudden we're starting to talk low frequency, low energy. And it's the difference between abundance and scarcity. It really is.
Sure.
And I went as far in my with my young guys is like those were cuss words, and you never heard an athlete of mine say they were tired, fatigued, overwhelmed, none of that stuff. They spoke like champions, and they became champions.
Right. What you say matters. What you say yourself matters. And I learned that when you stop telling yourself, oh, I'm stupid. Oh, I'm dumb. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. And then you change that verbiage around and you say, you know what? I do have powerful qualities. I am really good at speaking with somebody or whatever it is. You find the positive, you start training your brain to find the positive. And that's what I love about what you were saying. One of my favorite phrases of mine is I set the intention to have a great podcast conversation. I set the intention to encourage this person when I have to go into this meeting. How about you? Do you have a favorite phrase that you use?
I'm actually a visualization person from my sports background, which I think is as powerful as intention. My wife is an intention person. If we do a mastermind, she makes everybody go around the room and set their intention. So she does, Sue, exactly what you do. I learned, from studying the top athletes, whether it was Michael Jordan or whether Michael Phelps was the guy for me. I'm like, okay, this guy is not only the greatest swimmer of all time, not only the greatest athlete of all time, he's also the greatest Olympian of all time. So when I read Michael Phelps's book, he just kept talking about how the mental was 11-1 to the physical. And I'm like, 11-1 to the physical? Because I'm like, and I kept reading it. And, in a 7-hour training day, he's working on visualization for most of the day. Sure, he trains incredibly hard. But he was one of these guys who not only envisioned what he wanted to happen, he visualized every day, 7 days a week for 13 years, Christmas days, visualizing winning. But Sue, what he did that nobody else did he visualized overcoming all of the stuff that was going to happen that was beyond his control.
Oh, wow.
Every day he would visualize his swimsuit having a tear in it. He would visualize his goggles fogging up. He would visualize not feeling at his best. He would visualize getting a slow start. And then he would visualize overcoming it. And I
Mm,
never forgot that. When I was a young coach, I used to focus on all the unicorn stuff. If everything goes our way, and this goes back into the fact that failure is part of winning, I started visualizing what I wanted to happen, but I also visualized overcoming things that happened during the day. And that's where, the championship started to, things are going to happen. Control the controllable, but also be prepared for what you can't control. So
mhm.
I know what you're saying. Intention is massive. I've used visualization because like it takes 2 minutes in the morning, me sitting on the edge of my bed before my gratitude prayer, to just see myself winning that first hour. I literally see myself putting on my walking shoes, putting on my rucking vest, grabbing the dog, and walking. And I just like, okay, now I can do it. And that's the power of intention and visualization.
Yeah, I love visualization too. I would picture myself on stage somewhere, and it actually did happen. So,
Of course.
visualization is everything as well as intention. Michael, I have a few questions I always ask all of my guests. The first one is, what is one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered the question or expanded on the topic?
Well, I'm known as a marketing guy, and I see today small business owners like I was, they're all confused on what to do. So every industry I go into, whether it was the window cleaning business, the insurance business, this business, the hockey business, the barbershop business, whenever I enter a business as a rookie, and anytime I open, I'm starting again. The number one marketing thing I do, Sue, is I slowly and gradually build an email list.
Hmm.
That's it. I don't do social media. I don't do any of that stuff at the beginning. I do one thing, and I only have time for one thing. I build my email list. I email that list consistently every week, and I sell the products that help people. That's my three-prong approach. Most of the people that I run into now that are small business owners, they're overwhelmed. They don't know where to start. Should I be doing X? Should I be doing YouTube? Should I be doing stuff on TikTok? And they don't do anything. And I'm like, listen, the number one priority for a small business owner, whether you're window washing or a hockey team or a Rotary Club, I don't care what you're doing, start building your email list, email it consistently, and sell the product that you have that'll help them and improve their lives. So I'm going on 23 years, and I've never ever missed an email in 23 years, every
Wow,
single day, including this morning.
cool.
365 days a year, I take 10 minutes out of my day, Christmas Day, Thanksgiving, Easter, sick, happy, not happy, and I write an email to my list. So I've only been in this business for 4 years, and I've sent an email for 4 years, and I started with 20 emails. In the insurance business, I started with 0 emails, and I built it over 17 years to 62,000.
Wow.
And when I sold that company, I had the deal in place, and I said to the guys, I said, by the way, do you want my asset? And they said, what's that? And I said, I have an email list. It's not part of this deal. And they said, well, what do you want for that email list? And I said, well, every time I email once a week, it generates around $10,000 to $30,000 in sales. I said, I'll take $500,000 for it. I'm in a very good mood today. They said, done. So not only did I sell the agency and they bought the email list. And by the way, they've never emailed the list once. In the barbershop business, I built an email list of 6,000 and I sold it separately. In the hockey business, I sold the hockey team and the email
Email.
list. Sorry, but I'm a email caveman. I do not bother with
Yeah.
social media because I don't own those platforms. When you build a list, it's
Right.
yours. You
Yeah, I've heard of that before. You own that list. As we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's gonna help them change their tomorrow?
Win the first hour of your day, period.
Michael, how can people find you?
You can download a free copy of my book, my brand new book, at brassballsecrets.com. I love that domain, by the way, brassballsecrets.com. That'll also add you to my daily email. So you'll see what I'm doing every day. I talk about money, marriage, marketing, fitness, whatever's on my mind, brassballsecrets.com, and you'll get a free download of my new book.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michael. Again, thank you so much for the gift of your time. This episode has so much packed into it, and I know I got a lot out of it. So I greatly appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me, and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.